Our story starts from somewhere in the ocean of Tokyo Bay. A pleasure craft floats around with no passengers in sight. The Coast Guard decides to check it out and finds some strange origami and a weird document. Just as they're getting curious, boom! A huge explosion rocks the water nearby, and suddenly, blood starts leaking from an underwater tunnel. Yaguchi, the Deputy Chief Cabinet Secretary of Japan, is alerted along with a bunch of other important government officials. They all stare in shock at the creepy footage of the red liquid swirling in the ocean. Quickly, the government starts evacuating people from the tunnel, but loud noises echo from below. Civilians filming the chaos start spotting something big moving under the water, and Yaguchi sees this online too. He tries to warn the Prime Minister about the creature, but everyone laughs at him for suggesting something so outrageous. Just when they think they're safe, live footage of the creature pops up on the news, and everyone gasps at the sight of this monstrous thing. The creature starts making its way toward land, smashing boats and bridges like they're made of toothpicks. Scientists review the footage and notice legs on the monster, warning the Prime Minister that it might be able to walk on land. The government leaders brush it off, telling the Prime Minister to calm the public during a press conference. But before he can finish his speech, he gets news that the monster has actually made it into the city. Panic ensues as people run for their lives, and the giant creature barrels through the streets, leaving destruction in its wake. As the monster moves closer to the city center, it starts leaking blood from its gills, probably because it can't breathe without water. The government scrambles to contain the creature and warns everyone about the danger, but the monster keeps wrecking everything in sight. It may be crawling slowly for its size, but in the dense city of Tokyo, it causes massive damage in no time. The government considers sending in the military but realizes they need to evacuate everyone first to avoid any collateral damage. An evacuation order is given, but getting everyone out of Tokyo in time is nearly impossible. People are told to leave their cars and follow police instructions to escape the chaos, while the monster continues its rampage, flipping cars like they're toys and toppling buildings with ease, taking out anyone who didn't evacuate in time. Seeing the destruction, the governor of Tokyo demands the self-defense force step in to stop the creature. But there's a catch. Military action can only be taken if another nation attacks, so the Prime Minister has to make an exception to mobilize the army. Finally, he agrees to send in helicopters to take out the monster while ground troops help with the evacuation. As the giant monster continues to wreak havoc, it suddenly stops and collapses, likely because it can't breathe properly. The leaders are puzzled, but then they notice the creature is acting strangely. It stands up, its color shifting to a deeper red, and it grows arms from its fins. It doubles in size and lets out a furious roar, now towering over the city. The monster moves faster now, throwing trains and cars like they're nothing. Helicopters arrive and the pilots notice the creature looks different from the reports. They get into position to fire, but just then, they learn that there are still civilians on the ground. The leader orders a temporary retreat, not wanting to risk innocent lives. The monster sees the soldiers backing off and takes the chance to escape back toward the ocean, disappearing into Tokyo Bay. After the monster retreats, government officials start examining the damage, and Yaguchi feels like they really dropped the ball. They could have reacted way better. The military is out there searching for the creature but can't find hide nor hair of it, and the general suggests they should just prepare for the next time the monster shows up. So, they start planning to use tanks, artillery, and airstrikes to take the beast down when it reappears. Yaguchi gets assigned to assemble a task force to come up with a plan to counter the creature, but a biologist chimes in, speculating that the monster might have different stages it can transform into. The team wonders how this giant thing can fuel its massive body, and the only logical explanation is that it somehow undergoes nuclear fission. After analyzing the monster's data, they confirm their theory: it produces radiation wherever it goes. But that also means the residents are at risk of radiation poisoning. Suddenly, Yaguchi gets a call from a woman named Kyoko, who represents the US president. She wants the Japanese government to find a professor named Goro Maki, who predicted the monster's appearance. Apparently, this guy was kicked out of Japan for hating nuclear power and was the owner of the boat that disappeared at the beginning of movie. Kyoko hands over some documents about the professor, which reveal that he named the monster Godzilla, meaning the incarnation of God. Kyoko explains that humans have been dumping radioactive materials into the ocean, and this is what allowed the creature to evolve. She also shows a large diagram that Professor Maki left behind, but no one can make heads or tails of it. Yaguchi tells the team to analyze it immediately, as it might hold the key to defeating Godzilla. After studying the radiation produced by Godzilla, they discover a new isotope that doesn't even exist on the periodic table. This suggests the monster has unknown elements in its body. They also find out that Godzilla has 8 times the genetic information of a human and can mutate itself, making it the most evolved creature on the planet. The team figures out that Godzilla's blood acts like a coolant for its radiation, which is why it ran back into the ocean after transforming, because it needs to cool down. They come up with a plan, force the monster to use up its nuclear energy and then inject it with coagulators to freeze it with its own cooling system. But before they can put their plan into action, they get the news that Godzilla has resurfaced, and it's even bigger this time. The monster has transformed its skin into armor and turned its tail into a giant weapon that towers over its body. It stomps onto land, causing chaos and destruction as it moves into the residential area. People are running for their lives as Godzilla crushes everything in its path, towering over even the tallest buildings. The government knows they have to act fast before the creature reaches Tokyo or destroys a nuclear facility, which would be a disaster. Since Higuchi's plan is still a work in progress, the Prime Minister has no choice but to send the full force of the Japanese military against Godzilla. The army lines up tanks and prepares for the monster's arrival. Helicopters take to the skies and start firing autocannons at Godzilla's face, landing hit after hit. But guess what? The monster doesn't even flinch. The Prime Minister gives the green light to use all military weapons, and the squadron starts launching missiles at Godzilla. Huge explosions engulf the monster's head, but when the smoke clears, Godzilla just steps out, looking as unharmed as ever. The military switches to Plan B and orders all tanks to fire at the creature's legs, causing a barrage of explosions. They even fire artillery at its face, but Godzilla just keeps marching forward like it's on a leisurely stroll. Eventually, the attacks slow Godzilla down as it approaches a bridge. The military sends in their deadliest weapon, dropping bombs on the creature, creating massive explosions. For a moment, it looks like they might have a chance, but instead of retreating, Godzilla gets mad. It grabs the bridge and hurls it toward the tanks, sending them scattering like ants. The concrete crashes down, destroying vehicles and toppling the command post. Godzilla emerges from the dust, still unharmed, and continues its march toward Tokyo. The military watches in despair as they realize they've exhausted all their ammunition. With no other options left, they have to call for help from the United States to take down this gigantic menace. The Americans send 3 stealth bombers zooming toward Tokyo, but the Japanese quickly realize that the explosion might cause even more damage than the monster itself. So, the government orders everyone to move underground to escape the incoming blasts. Even the officials have to clear out, not knowing if the Americans will actually stop Godzilla. Meanwhile, Godzilla is just chilling in the middle of the city, glowing red from all that radiation inside. The stealth bombers drop a bunch of bombs on the creature, and they actually penetrate its skin. Blood flies everywhere as Godzilla lets out a scream that could wake the neighbors. But instead of going down, the creature starts evolving, turning that red glow into a bright purple. It opens its mouth wide, and the light gets even brighter. Suddenly, black smoke billows out, igniting into flames that spread across the city faster than a toddler with a crayon on a white wall. Godzilla then focuses all that fiery energy into a plasma beam and shoots it straight up, taking out one of the planes like it's swatting a fly. The Americans, undeterred, drop more bombs, but Godzilla just closes its mouth and unleashes beams from its back that destroy the bombs and the bombers at the same time. Then, Godzilla fires a blast toward the city, cutting through everything in its path, including the helicopter carrying the Prime Minister. Buildings topple, and the city is left in flames. After using up all its energy, Godzilla finally shuts down and goes into hibernation, standing amidst the ruins. But Higuchi, our hero, survives the chaos, but when he returns to the new headquarters, he finds the Japanese government in total disarray after losing the Prime Minister and many officials. But Higuchi isn't ready to give up. He believes there's still a chance to stop the sleeping monster. A new Prime Minister is quickly appointed, but no one is thrilled about taking the leadership role during this disaster. Luckily, most of Higuchi's team made it through the attack, and he urges everyone to do their best to save Japan from more destruction. The team starts gathering coagulants from various companies and collecting DNA samples from Godzilla in the city. The US government wants to team up, and they discover that Godzilla can reproduce asexually, which means it could spread across the planet. American scientists hear this and immediately report back, leading to a decision to use a thermal nuclear bomb to destroy the creature. They figure that if Godzilla stays alive, it could threaten North America too. Higuchi believes they can still save Tokyo with their plan to freeze the monster, but they need time to evacuate the city first. The team scrambles to gather a massive amount of coagulants and the right equipment to deliver the chemicals, but they're stuck trying to figure out the diagram left by Professor Maki. After staring at the origami he left behind, they finally realize it's three-dimensional and needs folding to understand. They discover that Godzilla doesn't need nuclear waste as fuel, it actually consumes water and oxygen to create an isotope that powers it up. The monster is a huge threat to humanity but also holds the key to saving it by converting water into pure energy. This means the coagulants might not work unless they understand Godzilla's molecular structure. Working together with other nations and their fancy quantum computers, the team deciphers Godzilla's unique elements and makes the necessary adjustments for their plan. Kyoko decides to stay and help, providing drones and weapons from the US. On the day before the nuclear strike, the Japanese government plans to capture the monster and save their country. They send trains loaded with explosives toward Godzilla, and when they explode, the massive creature wakes up from its slumber. Drones swarm in, dropping bombs one by one, forcing Godzilla to expend energy by shooting lasers at them. The explosions destroy buildings and countless drones, but Godzilla is still standing strong. As the monster starts to run low on energy, it redirects its energy beams to its tail and mouth, causing even more chaos. The military switches tactics and detonates buildings around Godzilla, causing them to collapse on the creature. Finally, Godzilla is knocked to the ground, and its internal temperature starts dropping as it runs low on energy. With the giant creature knocked unconscious, the team seizes the moment to send in soldiers to inject the blood-freezing agents. Trucks surround Godzilla and start injecting the coagulants into its mouth. But after only using about 20% of the required amount, the creature regains consciousness. Godzilla opens the mouth and shoots a furious plasma beam towards the trucks, killing everyone on sight as the explosion engulfs the area. The monster glows purple and tries to escape, but the military isn't done yet. More trains are sent crashing into Godzilla, causing huge explosions that knock the creature down again. The trucks come back in for another round of injections, and this time they manage to deliver the full dose. But just when they think they're in the clear, Godzilla wakes up and tears the trucks apart like they're made of paper. It stands up, glowing even brighter, and roars one last time. Its body starts freezing, and finally, Godzilla stops moving, as the core temperature dropping to nearly -200 degrees. The people are stunned by their success, and scientists discover that Godzilla's isotope only has a half-life of 20 days, meaning the citizens can return home soon. With the temporary government resigned and a new generation ready to lead Japan into the future, Yaguchi decides to share all the data with other nations, believing it can benefit humanity as a whole. But little do they know, Godzilla was evolving before it froze, trying to adapt and become more like the very creatures that defeated it. So, what do you think about this wild ride? Let me know in the comments section. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more crazy adventures like this. See you next time. Oh sorry, I forgot to mention that this movie's name is Shin Godzilla, which has got 6.8 rating on IMDb, and it's worth watching. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let's meet again in next video.